Alright guys, let's talk about the next batch of shareholder letters from June to July. As you can see here, it will be the month that this Discord absolutely hassles the company. And you'll see what I mean. The stock was in a downtrend after a huge run up here in June and July of 2021. If you don't believe me, you can look at the chart. We're not going to look at charts here. We're looking at the shareholder letters. So, dear shareholders, June 7th, 2021, we're almost approaching 10,000 followers. We are thankful to the groups who create their own spin-off social media groups. Okay, here are some questions we were asked in a Discord social media group, which I felt were very relevant to talk about. How has the additional shares that were converted into the share structure over the past few months affected the anticipated timeline for uplisting? And how do buybacks factor into the current plans? So before I continue reading, remember guys, they've been talking about uplisting and share buybacks. Share buybacks. They've been throwing that word out there. If you've been watching the past couple of videos, since the first shareholder letter, they've been talking about buying back shares and uplisting. So let's continue here. The additional shares were not helpful to our overall strategy for uplisting. It could have been significantly worse, but we have to live with the situation. We are pleased that we have now concluded this. Let's see. We are working on exposure to investors in the Middle East and Asia who will hopefully soak up the excess stock and importantly tie it up for several years with a long-term view. We are hiring a full-time investor relations manager who will dedicate much of their time and effort to making potential investors, family offices, and institutions aware of our company. Buybacks are a sensitive topic for all, and this should not be mistaken as a temporary squeeze to push the price up to give retail investors a chance to sell at a quick profit. Remember, 2021 was a crazy year. People they just wanted a quick 100, 200, 10,000%. So don't forget that as I continue reading here. Spending cash on growth creates long-term value, but spending money on buybacks is a defensive situation, creating a short-term unsustainable price rise. This would be costly to our business, and we are focused on nurturing the company fundamentals and growing a healthy business. Buybacks work well when the company is strong, growing, and on a long-term upward curve, regardless of the buybacks. It is then highly effective for all investors to implement buybacks. Buybacks in a defensive situation would only benefit the short-term investor, which is true at this point in time. We are focused on building our business for the long term and creating a business that will deliver significant returns over time. The creation of true value takes time and there is no shortcut. AKA, what they're trying to say is they're not going to buy back shares. Remember, if you've been following my videos in the past couple of videos, they kept talking shareholder value, buying back shares, and now they're taking a step back and they're basically saying we're not going to do it until it makes sense. So they're taking it back now. Now they added the stipulation of when it makes sense. And obviously they're answering this question because they kept getting pestered about it. Like, hey, when is the buyback coming in? Our buyback strategy is very much aligned with this approach. We must get the basics right first, soak up the excess stock, and create sustainable growth and organic forward momentum, and then buybacks could be considered. So that's when you're going to get your buybacks when it makes sense, like I just said. So they kind of added that stipulation, whereas beforehand they didn't say any of that. They were talking buybacks, uplisting. But now it's like, oh wait, guys, wait, we're gonna do a buyback, but when it makes sense. So now they're taking a step back on that, and it makes sense if you think about it. What else? We understand that the historical rapid changes to the share structure created doubts and the loss of confidence, and the short selling, which appears like endless dilution, didn't help the cause. On some days, short selling took place in excess of 65%. We're in the process of making some positive adjustments to the share structure. You might as well, and you might well see some reductions to the share structure on the next update. That's funny for them to say that. You might well see some reductions to the share structure on the next update. But that was irrelevant. It was pointless because we're in the future right now. It's 2024. So looking back, I mean, we're literally, in the future relative to this shareholder letter back in April. I think my cat's about to vomit, but it's okay, buddy. It's okay, buddy. Yeah, that's funny for them to say that. Hey, you might see some reductions, even though 3 years later, it didn't even matter if they did reduce it. We are sure that confidence will come back pretty quickly once the shareholders start seeing the consistency and stability over the next few updates. And they keep reiterating that it's a long term play. Okay. Yeah, so that's about it. The either Discord or some Discord was just pestering them, and you'll see why. Here we go, another one. June 20th, dear shareholder, answers to your questions. Thank you for your continued loyalty, as well as the time and effort that everyone in the Discord room spares to discuss the Ilus business. And man, the Ilus Discord has been around for they've been around for some time. Let's see. Uh, so here we go. They're talking about the conversions, which were supposed to stop. Remember, they said, "Hey, it's stop, it's done, no more conversions, dilution, blah blah blah." It is regarding the old conversions, which seem to come up time and time again. I feel that sometimes many shareholders forget that a company usually goes public in order to raise capital, which is needed in order to grow and simultaneously to create an opportunity for shareholders to make a lot of money. Companies take time to build and will be around long after many of the investors retire. Yeah, so basically what they're saying here is, yeah, here's a perfect summary. Sadly, though, short-term investors in these same companies will lose a lot of money along the way due to a lack of patience or an incorrect investment strategy. A lot of people holding a bag and are down on their position, which is true. Especially the short terms who became longs, obviously. And you guys know those people. They're short term. They were looking for the quick, 1,000% flip because this was back in 2021. And when it didn't work out, they just held long term. They became investors. Funny. Uh, and Alice is addressing these people clearly. That was such a long time ago. Crazy. Hmm. We cannot and will not change our business strategy weekly based on the trends of red or green days. We have a plan and we are working very diligently towards delivering it. That's true to some extent, except for the fact that they never actually followed through on keeping the outstanding shares under a billion, which you'll see what I mean. It's not fun being on the end of my inbox or anywhere near my phone on red day. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. If a company is selling some shares to raise capital and using the capital to grow and acquire assets, that will ultimately add value to the what they fucked up here. If a company is selling some shares to raise capital and use the capital to grow and acquire assets, that will ultimately add to the shareholders' value in the long term. This is why companies go public. Okay, we know that, but they still didn't deliver on a lot of the promises that they made. So here they're basically declaring that we're going to dilute you. That's essentially what they're saying. We're going to dilute. Even though in the next shareholder letter, you'll see that they mention trying to keep the outstanding shares under a billion, and they never followed through on that because let's go over here to the share structure update. Dear shareholders, I am writing to provide you with an interim update on the promised share structure reorganization. This is taking a little longer than anticipated due to there being multiple moving parts and parties involved. Blah blah blah. We've heard this before. They love to make excuses. They never follow through. Again, this is a shareholder letter from 3 years ago. So we're in the future now. They never followed through on anything. You could say this company sucks. I mean, it's a real company, but let's see, where is it? Right here. Here we go. There are some shares being retired, many millions of shares being canceled, and a few hundred shares, millions moving around. But that doesn't mean anything because 3 years later, they ended up diluting the stock by 50% one year, and then the next year they diluted it another 30% within the first 3 months, and then increased the authorized shares by almost 100%. So none of that mattered. Here we go, guys. Here's the most important one. This is something I'm going to call them out on. And yeah, like I said, I like looking at both sides of the equation. I'm going to look at the positive and the negatives. I'm going to grill them on the good and the bad when I do that interview with the CEO. I cannot confirm the exact amount of the overall reduction because there are pending signatures and agreements outstanding, etc. But I can say that we are aiming to get the outstanding share structure to well below 1 billion during this first phase. Let's have a good laugh here. Let's go to OTC markets. Civil can go to hell. That thing is garbage and dying. Well, it's already dead down there because of the caveat emptor, however you want to say it. English, Latin, doesn't matter. Let's go to Ilus, and you'll notice the outstanding share structure was never kept. They never followed through on that. It's at 1.8 billion. Mind you, the authorized shares was increased to 3.5 billion. So they obviously plan on diluting even more. So ultimately, that shareholder letter, that specific one, where, but I can say that we are aiming to get the outstanding share structure to well below 1 billion during this first phase. So that, I mean, that they never followed through on that. And you can say whatever you want, but you better believe I'm going to grill them on that. And I know what they're gonna say. I'm preparing this whole Word document, guys. Look at that shareholder letter. I'm marking the date. I'm gonna take pictures. I'm gonna come up with a bunch of questions and follow up questions, and I can pretty much predict what they're gonna say, and then make follow up questions based on what I my prediction. So it's very intricate what I'm doing here. But yeah, they never did that, did they? Here we are 4 years later, and they're gonna increase the authorization and and the outstanding shares to probably 2 billion plus. Let's be real. But yeah, that's let's see, anything else here of note? Yeah, that's about it. I don't think a lot of people were crying here. The Idols Discord is probably just crying a lot because obviously they invested in it at a time where the stock was just dumping.